Good afternoon. Hello and welcome to Maap Real Talk Show. Today is not like any other day. Today is a special day. Today we're going to discuss the very important issue that many of us don't understand, and especially on social network, when people decide to come up with different things. But first, I'd like to introduce you to my honorable guest, my friend now, I hope we will be, and his name is Kirk Nurmi. Mr. Kirk Nurmi, welcome to the show.
George, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
We are very honored. You notice I'm getting speechless to talk to you, sir. We're very honored to have you on board again officially. And I said it to you 3 times, and I'll say it one more time. We're really honored. Because guys like you that keeps the law and constitutional and uphold, and they go into the lion's den in the fire, and that I need to recognize. But before we get into the details, sure. I want to introduce you to my co-hosts.
All right.
First on your left, you see Cyndee Head. Come on, Cyndee, say hello.
Hello,
Hi,
how are you?
Good. And of course, on her left is Mr. Ken Ronk.
Pleasure.
Hi.
Nice to
Is
meet you.
our co-host.
All right.
Should we call him senior?
No, well, he,
It's
She always
your
ties that to age.
Right.
We'll come up with another
okay,
name.
chronologically, he
Yes.
is senior to me, but that's okay.
Well, because you objected it the last time.
Well, yeah, well,
So,
you
Mr.
know.
Kirk, just to let you know, like everybody here already was so excited to have you on our show, our humble show. And I am in particular, I don't know where to begin because there's so much been covered. And as I read and I knew through my life, through experiencing you through TV and watching everything unfold, of course I follow news, media, and as well as films. During that period, I will hear bits and pieces. You know, I didn't hear the whole thing like 100%. But then now that I went deep for the past 5 days, I need to get paid for this because it was heavy homework. Nobody knows. I really don't know. There is so much I could cover you with 100 hours.
Yeah.
On this day. And literally, folks, this is why today there's no got you moment. Today, we're going to talk. They call him an infamous, but I call him famous. For me, as a person, not because of just the show that the job that he did, but at the end of the day, it's what he had done for the past, and the sacrifice. Is it 5.5 years you said? Or I thought it was 7.
5.5 years with her.
The sacrifice that he did, as of now, I got to introduce you to you again as a defense lawyer. Former now.
I bear that with a badge of honor,
Okay,
George.
former, but at that time, I followed it by saying at that time.
All right.
At that time, okay, you were hired by the public defenders, by the state, by the people. Then the prosecutor was hired by the same, different, of course, branch, but in the same thing, representing this. It's no big money for you. It's not like he made billions of dollars. This is the job that he was required by our constitutional to protect the citizens. So when you sit and you start typing someone that's presenting the law and order that keeps us safe, like today to have our show in peace, this is the guys that we have to say thank you for their service. Because they go in the lion's den, I said it twice, and what everybody knows what that means. It's like uncharted water. You don't know what's going to happen. You got to get scratched. You got to get eaten up. Why we have to write those things? The reason why, because nobody explains it. Here I am today with our show. We're going to take you on another trip. The different side of the story. The story of a human being, a family man, wife, kids, the whole 9 yards, calm, having his life like every day. Went to law school. Nobody goes to law school under vigorous studies just to be a nasty guy or misbehave or be a criminal. No. People that go to law schools, medical school, there's a reason why it's 7, 10, 8, 10 years. Because it takes dedication, time consuming, and focused. With that said, today I talk too much, but then the next hour is going to be him. Because I'm not going to ask him too many questions. The question is going to rely on your thoughts to give you that positive energy, ladies and gentlemen. From him to you, from me to you, with all due respect. Again, I'm back to reality a little bit because I'm going into the education. There's so much to cover. Welcome again.
Thank you.
Is there something you could tell us before the storm? The calmness. You graduated law school, you with your wife and kids, and now you get the call. Well, where did the whole thing start?
Let me back up a little bit.
Yes.
I went to law school. I began law school in 1997. I went to the University of Wyoming. My wife and I moved to Laramie. And I went there with the idea that I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney because the rights you just talked about, the First Amendment that allows you to do what you do, as well as the Fourth Amendment that stops police from knocking on your door, right to fair trial. All those things always meant a lot to me. So I went to law school with the idea that I was going to become a criminal defense attorney.
Right.
After my first 2 years, I was allowed to practice in Wyoming. I became the appellate director of a defender aid clinic, meaning we argued appellate rights for convicted inmates in Wyoming. And I got to argue in front of the Wyoming Supreme Court twice. Not mock competition, but real deal, right? And because and I was happy to do so because those rights always meant a lot to me. And then when I graduated in 2000, a friend of mine had ties here and set up an interview with the Maricopa County Public Defender's Office, which was a natural step for me because I wanted to do criminal defense work, and that's where a lot of people start.
You want to do your passion.
To cut their teeth. And I always believed, in addition to those rights, is that it shouldn't be just based on your income. Like, you should be able to get good, diligent, vigorous representation without having to pay for it. So that's one of the things I tried to do.
But that's what I want to explain to our audience. This is
education.
very important, vital point you just brought up. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, and so over the years, that's what I did in the courtroom, and a lot of people think, oh, how can you defend the guilty? And you get that as cocktail parties, right? As I moved here, I became a member of the bar. I started meeting more people. How can you defend those people?
It's a right, though.
But it's really not about the people. It's about the rights. And one thing that criminal defense attorneys will say, it's about the client, or it's about the Constitution. Not the client, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you go in and you defend those rights. You're not defending their conduct. You're not defending anything they did or said. You are defending their rights.
Right.
And I did that with the Maricopa County Public Defender's Office for, over 10 years.
Whoa, that's a long tenure.
Yeah, and in 2010, I was a member of the Capital Defense Unit. So if you remember, those people who have been around Maricopa County for a while, Andrew Thomas was the county attorney.
Yes.
And he believed in the death penalty very vociferously, right?
Yeah.
And so he was charging a lot of cases. And after about 7 or 8 years in my career, I was kind of getting burned out on all the cases, the high caseload, everything else. Yeah. So I was offered the chance to move to the capital unit, the death penalty unit, which is the ultimate defense of rights, because we're talking about the power of our government to unnaturally terminate someone's life early, right? So I moved to that unit in about 2008, 2009. And I tried 2 death penalty cases before I became infamous, as we talked about. And it was, which doesn't sound like a lot, but there are people who've been in that unit for dozens of years that had not even gone to trial, right? And so I tried 2 of those death penalty cases, and we always had 2 or 3 on our caseload. And after I finished one, that's when my supervisor walked down the hallway and handed me a file, an empty file, because it was getting transferred and there was all kinds of stuff. But that file had Jodi Arias' name on it. And that was August of 2009.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's when the whole thing started with you.
Yeah, on one level, yeah.
Did you imagine that's the route or the road you would take in the path when you got handed that file? Did you understand?
No, because in 2009, a lot of people, well, you don't have any input in it because you're assigned a case, right? And there's no good cases in the capital unit because it's always a first-degree murder charge. And more often than not, if they're charging the death penalty, guilt is pretty much a foregone conclusion. Right. It's about saving someone's life.
So what was all this chaos if everybody knows she's going to be sentenced to life or capital punishment? But what was all the mayhem that's happening around that case during that period when you first took office?
Well, when I first took over, we got to step back in time because people have a hard time conceptualizing it. In 2009, she wasn't the notorious, infamous figure that she was, right? It was just the thing that stood out to me when I had the case. It was a female. It's very rare that you see a female facing execution, right? It's overwhelmingly male, and they have typically have a long and colorful criminal history.
Right, but she did it, right?
But she didn't. And what had taken place in terms of media back then, because this was a year later. She had prior counsel, got transferred to me a year later. In 2008, after her arrest, she had done some interviews with, I believe it was CBS 48 Hours. Right. And then she did one before she was extradited. She was arrested in California. She did an interview, then she was extradited to Arizona, and she did another one. And there were a few other interviews, but that was it. That was the sum total of the media exposure at that point in time. So it had some media coverage, but it wasn't a big deal, all caps,
Yeah,
gonna
like
draw
this
worldwide
worldwide, yeah.
attention, right, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, this is incredible.
Big headlines,
Well,
yeah.
and this was a while ago, and I remember reading somewhere, and you can correct me if
Sure.
I'm wrong. At some point, she was wanting the death penalty over life in prison because they got different privileges or things that they got in jail. If that is any truth to it.
Well, I think she had made comments about preferring death to life in prison, but they were based on her belief that she would live a long time and that she'd rather just die than have to spend her life in prison.
That's interesting.
So was she asking for it? Is that what I gather? Like, because there was one of her interviews, she just mentioned exactly what you said. She said that I'd rather like die now than because I'm gonna live long. Her jeopardy of life, she has a family, like she could live long. She don't want to be in one spot for a long time.
Well, her assertions on that varied. If you recall, in the
Right.
trial, she pled for her life. She
Right.
asked for her life. At other times, she asked for her life. But most infamously, on the day she was sentenced to found guilty of
right.
first-degree murder, that very day, she went down to the basement of the courthouse, did a local interview,
and she said what she
and
said.
she said that, well, she blamed me for her defense and the choice to call her
Right.
her victim an abusive pedophile, which was certainly not true. But beyond that, she made the statement during that interview that she would rather get death than life.
Help me walk through one question.
Sure.
Why do we believe? Can I call a person allegedly a perp, like a thief or a killer or a homicidal maniac, what they say over lawyers? I always battled with this. Like when I watched the news, like now you just corrected me. I had the news in a different version because you get those bits, like I told you. That's why I don't make up my mind until I found the whole story, right? Why, like what she says, it's relevant. Like a lot of people could come up with any accusation, throw it at you, and everybody would believe that person. Like it could be a thug, a thief. Like they're aiming to hurt you. But why do we always follow that? Like the news was going crazy when that happened. Like, oh, the lawyer did this, the attorney, the defense attorney. The whole morning was, and I'm going, whoa, because I was a coach at the time too, and then I'm looking at it like, no, there's got to be two sides to the story here. Well, and that's what I want you to walk us through this.
Sure. I mean, it is amazing because that lie in particular was very damaging because it was threatening to my life and the life of my family and all the death threats and things like that, right? But, I think sometimes in life people will believe what they want to believe, right? And so even though they know the source is a liar, it is a pathological liar and constant, they say, because, there's that great marketing book, Persuasion, by the ASU professor, talks about celebrity endorsements, right? So you see a celebrity drink, like Tom Cruise maybe, drinking a Coke.
I did not know that. That was not me.
That was not me?
Yeah.
Tom, well, you get a restraining order.
Yeah. No, but
if Tom, if you're watching, a restraining order. But and they see him drinking a Coke, and they think he likes Coke, right? And so they saw me advocating for Miss Arias, and they made that association. And they see the words, they see me on TV, coming out of the words coming out of my mouth, and they believe that I believe these things, that I told these lies or what have you, right? And so they're so wanting to, and she didn't talk as much, right? I mean, she testified for 18 days, which might be a world record, right? But she said these things that people wanted to believe, because going back to what we were talking about earlier, is people want to believe defense attorneys are sleazy and everything else.
And that's what I mean. Why do we do that? Like, it's got to be, nobody speak. This is why I want this show to be defending the defenders. How's that? Defend the attorneys. Because if it wasn't for them, we will have like a chaos going on in our courtrooms.
And it is a guilt by association. They see that relationship. They see.
But that's the law. It's constitutional rights.
I understand that.
She has all the rights to be represented.
And I'm not defending.
And I still call it alleged, because even though she's been prosecuted, she's already been sentenced. I would always say alleged because I wasn't there. I don't know anything. All I know as a regular citizen, I'm gravitating toward you to explain to us and to the audience, what do we need to do to protect ourselves for the future? That's really where this catch-22. What can we do so we don't have to sit and read all these people writing all this freedom that they have, attacking a defense lawyer while he's doing his job?
Well, look, I mean, empathy comes through understanding,
Right.
right? So it's not a matter of a deep understanding of law. It's like people like me coming out and talking about it
Right.
and saying, look, these are the rights, these are why we do the things
right.
we do. This is, why I like doing shows like this, because
Right.
it gives them a chance.
Yeah, it gives us
and
all
I
of us,
write
even
those,
myself.
Yeah, and I write those things in my book, and I tell the stories, and this is what criminal defense attorneys do, and the role they play in the constitutional democracy. And you talk about those people behind the keyboard.
Yeah.
People get shocked when I use this word, but to me, they're terrorists because they threaten a government institution.
And they went after you after that word.
And they went after me. They're going after people.
They did. I remember that.
When we have to have SWAT team walk us around the court, when we have to open our mail with white gloves, when we have to check our car for bombs, all that stuff, to me, that's terrorism. And we saw experts that were threatened during the case, everything else, and people just don't understand that it is the role we play. And look, it's understandable because we have so much to consume our lives, right? And we just look at headlines and we read the headline and fake news and all these things, right? So we look at the headlines and we feel the way we feel, and we look for an outlet for our anger. So on one level, I get it. But on another level, the more people understand, the more there is empathy and deeper understanding. And I think
we're going to have to take a short break, but we're going to come back
Okay.
with the same subject if you could continue, because I want to take a short break right now. This is Maap Real Talk Show. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back. Maap Real Talk Show, again with our guest, the previous defense attorney, Kirk Nurmi. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
We left at a point now, a little bit, I forgot. Can you shoot it off the hip a little bit and continue where we were?
Hit me with whatever.
Yeah, bring it on though.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what happened again with the case? In the middle of the case when she was interviewed by some channel, I don't know if I'm allowed to mention her, Jodi, Arias, and she said things that are contrary to what the trial was happening.
Sure. Well, after she was found guilty of first-degree murder, she did an interview in the courthouse with a local news station, wherein she said that it was my creation, her defense of that Mr. Alexander was an abusive pedophile was of my creation. She had nothing to do with it. And then she also went on and complained that I didn't find a couple witnesses that would prove this story, And I believe before break you were also asking me about why do we believe her, and we were talking about that kind of thing, right? And it's so funny because the next day she did after she did that one interview, the floodgates opened. She was on Good Morning America, all these shows, while the jury was literally deliberating between life or death, And she'd also said in this interview she wanted to die. So she was kind of also spitting in the face of the entire defense team, who had done all this work and had somewhat, to some degree, risked their lives to fulfill our role in a constitutional democracy. But then she went and repeated these things on TV, and no one reflected on the idea that if it was my story, why is she the one going on TV purporting it, And I've never advanced that story in any public forum, only when obligated to do so by the rules. And that's another point we were talking about, those constitutional rights earlier. Well, another thing specifically people don't realize is that a defendant is allowed to testify under the Sixth Amendment to whatever they want to, unless it can be definitively proven false. And you think about it, you can't disprove a negative, If something didn't happen, there's no way to disprove it. And that's the way kind of I see the pattern of Miss Arias' lies. I could not disprove what she said, so she was allowed to say it in court. And then what I would see is an effort to save her image and cast everything upon myself and the entire defense team. She says the defense was of their creation, which was not true. And at that time, I believed that, since the jury was deliberating life or death, that I would get to impose the truth upon that a couple days later, a week later at the most, And then, as we know, that was pretty naive on my part because the jury hung, and then I didn't get to impose truth upon her lies for 2.5 years.
Oh, gotcha. I know Cyndee had something to like that.
Well, and you were saying how much work that is every night preparing for the next day for a trial like this. So I was just wondering how your support system was at home, your wife and your fur baby, how that took a toll maybe on them, and then people attacking you, like how does that make them feel, or how did that kind of go?
Well, it was certainly a lot of long days, 12, 14-hour type days and working 6 to 7 days a week. And that was probably one of the reasons why back in the end of 2010, I'd done 2 capital trials. And they were shorter in duration, and they certainly weren't high profile like this one became. But those 12-hour days and a death penalty trial takes 3 to 4 months, even the shortest one, right? So it was late in 2010 that I decided that I didn't want that life anymore. And that's when I first tried to leave the public defender's office and leave Miss Arias' case behind. So this is kind of a roundabout way to get to your question, but it also illustrates the reality that this isn't where I wanted to be, right? I didn't want to be working 12 to 14 hours a day, doing death penalty case, et cetera, right? And a lot of people, going back to what George was saying, a lot of people thought I wanted to be there, right? That was part of the other misapprehension or misunderstanding. They thought I wanted to be there. I really didn't want to be there working, 12 to 14 hours a day in this long trial. I wanted a more sedate life. I'd been practicing law for a long time. But when the case became not just a case, but what I call a reality TV show, because I think it really did become a reality TV show
For
over
sure.
time. And when people were getting threatened, and when I was getting white powder in the mail and things of that nature, my wife is a school teacher. Her name was up on a school website, so she stepped away. She stopped working for those months. Must have taken its toll on her. Yeah, she stopped working for those months so she could do those things. And there were threats and everything else, and I had to have extra patrols at times from the police department and things like that. So it was a constant state of hypervigilance. But my wife was very supportive. She knew that I didn't want to be where I wanted to be because I had, obviously these plans of going into private practice and things like that. So, but she was very supportive, and it was one of those things for both of us, I think, to some degree, is that we thought the trial was going to be over sooner rather than it was, right? And not only that, but when I first was ordered to keep the case, it was supposed to be tried in August of 2011. Well, it didn't get tried till January of 2013. And then so you think, so I think probably as a unit, collectively, because I had to cancel vacations and dinner and things like that, right? And even going out in public became an unsafe situation at times, or potentially uncomfortable because you don't know how people are going to approach you.
How they're going to react.
Because I had the shaved head, and people at the gym would make snide remarks and stuff like that while I was working out, things like that. So
interesting turnout to be forced to try a case with that tension going on. It seems like that. It's an interesting thing to.
Well, remember though, the tension wasn't there until it wasn't what it was until it became what it was, right? So in 2011, when the judge said, no, you're staying on even as you go into private practice, nobody could have foreseen what it would become. And it just kept going and going and going. And you think, going back to your question, seeing that light at the end of the tunnel for not only myself, but my wife and everything going forward and getting back to private practice. In May of 2013, when the jury was deliberating her fate in terms of life or death, and she's giving these interviews and things of that nature, you're thinking that's going to be the end of it. I'm seeing that light at the end of the tunnel. And then when the jury hung, it got shut off. And I was still there as their sentencing phase attorney. And witnesses wouldn't come back because of the threats, et cetera, et cetera. So, and that's why I use the word terrorism unapologetically. Those people were threatened, they wouldn't come back, and that drug out the justice process.
Without a doubt.
Because we had to find new witnesses and that sort of thing. So that just made it all the longer and probably all the more painful for everyone involved in the case.
I was just curious if through your childhood or like high school or something, if you had some friends, or if there was something in your younger days prior to schooling that made you want to defend somebody as a public defender as opposed to in any other avenue you could have went as an attorney. Was there something that maybe you thought someone was unfairly tried or something happened unjust that said, I want to defend somebody that...
There's a couple things that I could necessarily draw a quote-unquote direct line, right? But when I was in grade school, maybe, second or third grade, I was drawn to this book, She Wants to Be a Lawyer. My heart was connected to it. I believe a lot in those connections with the heart. My heart was connected to that, and I read that book all the time, and it was, you know, in adult terms, it was complete BS because everybody was happy and, you know, everything was great. And, you know, later in life, I tell this story in my one-man show that we're going to talk about, sometimes about, you know, being wrongly accused myself and some friends of mine being wrongly accused of candy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one could say maybe that's why, but there's not a particular case or anything, but just, you know, those rights always meant something to me. And whether, you know, I can't go back and psychoanalyze myself,
Yeah, right.
but just,
Sure.
you know, just that idea, yeah, you can be wrongly accused and people can, and I saw it throughout my career. And unfortunately, sometimes in our country, we put an accusation as determination.
Which almost happened to you again in the end,
Yeah.
being wrongfully. Yeah.
And then you've written good English. I was a math teacher, not an English teacher.
Good emphasize.
In case anybody had any
Yeah,
doubts.
right. I don't know how to spell either, but you've written, almost did it again, a couple books, and
We're up to 6 now.
up to 6, and
Wow.
we probably get those on Amazon, maybe.
You can get them all on Amazon. KirkNurmi.com is my website, and it's got a link to my author page on Amazon.
Great. And so there you go. Check those out. But were they very therapeutic for you? Because I'm sure that was stressful and kind of like unwind from all of that. So
Yeah, you know, going back to 2015, say when the trial was over, right? And we were just talking a couple of minutes ago about the lies she told about me. And as a matter of fact, in 2014, I was still her attorney. She had a private investigator that she hired that wasn't part of the defense team, who went on various, you know, court TV type related shows, not them specifically, they were out of business, but crime related shows, and said, you know, talked about how I hadn't done a good job and how I hadn't done this and that and everything else. And again, with the abusive pedophile story that she was pitching, which again, nobody thought to mention, well, why, if that was Kirk's idea, she's so fixated on it. But be that as it may, it was April 2015 when we were finally done. She was sentenced to life. And I'd been wanting for years, probably about 4.5 at that point, ever since I was going to leave the public defender's office, to start my own practice and to, you know, just do a simpler caseload. And when I got done with that trial, I really had no desire to practice law. I'd been working so many hours, and so I decided I'd worked as a law professor for a little while, so I decided I'm going to take myself a sabbatical. That sounded more sophisticated than vacation. So my wife and I'm a baseball fan. The lack of baseball now is killing me, but I mean, we took a bunch of trips. We went to Kansas City, which is where the Negro League Hall of Fame is. Went to Cooperstown and did that. Coming back thinking that, you know, I was going to resume my practice of law. And I was just kind of trying to just let all the area stuff just kind of slide, right? You know, she'd said these lies about me. It was 2.5 years. I was going to let it go. And then one day in late August of 2015, I discover my lymph node is inflamed under my armpit. And this is at a time where I'm like hoping to find another path in life, but I'm not. It hasn't come to me yet. So just out of default mode, I was going to go back to the practice of law. And then it turns out, you know, to make a long story short, that lymph node under my armpit was this indication of stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which meant 6 rounds of chemotherapy in order to give myself a 70% chance of surviving. So it became important to me, yes, on a cathartic level, to get all this stuff out, but also because my life might not be as long as I thought it would be, you know, because, you know, we don't always think about death coming up, right? And even when we're in our 40s, we say, oh, you know, it's years off, or I'm going to get hit by a bus, right? And then all of a sudden and I sound like Don King when I say this, but my mortality became a reality, which is really true for the first time.
Right.
And I connected to that, and given that Miss Arias has a propensity to victimize or attack the legacy of the deceased, I decided that I wanted to make sure that I imposed in truth upon her lies in a way that could be done so beyond the grave. So when I found out I had that diagnosis, some of the therapeutic writing that I'd been doing kind of for myself, kind of journaling kind of thing, started morphing itself into a book, and that became my mission as I was going through chemotherapy, is to impose truth upon her lies, because I know that had I died, had that 30% chance come to pass, she would have continued to do so and to do anything she could to garner her freedom or to boost her fan base.
Very interesting.
Wow, that's very, very
Very,
interesting.
yeah.
When you said fan base, does that mean they were supporting her financially, like a Commerce Bank or book? Or
Well, yeah, I call them a cult, but
I don't know what they
fan
call
base,
them.
I call them a cult
You know
because
what?
they seem to believe everything she says.
Is it called
but-
Commerce, I think? Or, I mean, what
Well,
do they call
yeah,
it?
because I mean, it is actually commerce because she sells artwork on eBay.
Right,
She was
Right.
selling artwork on eBay throughout the entire trial.
right.
She has a quote unquote appellate fund
Oh, right.
that people donate.
I know a lot of people don't know that, that's why I wrote this
How many
out.
times can you appeal it?
You're only entitled to one appeal as of a right, as a paid appeal, as in the county or state pays for your appeal. If you don't get death. If you get death, it is automatically appealed all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And that is why, too, when people look back say, well, how is he doing these things? If I didn't do what I did
Right,
down the road,
Right.
the U.S. Supreme Court could say, no, he didn't do this, so we're going to vacate her death sentence. She gets another trial, something of that nature, right? So obviously we didn't know she was being sentenced to life. But to get back to your question,
quite-
yeah,
yeah.
she was using her fame
fame, that's what I meant, yeah.
and to garner this attention, to cast herself as innocent, and to ask for money in the appeals. And another thing she did is she enlisted her parents. Her dad's deceased now, so I hate to say this, but it's a reality. She had her parents get on YouTube, make a video, lie, and say that the defense team endorsed a particular appellate
Oh
fund.
my God.
And that was not the case. I never endorsed the appellate fund because I know that it comes at county expense.
Expense, yeah.
And even if she gets sentenced to death and goes all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, it's still at the expense of some government entity, which is why the death penalty is so much more expensive than life in prison, which is some people don't know.
Why?
Most of the
What-
time. But yeah, so she, yes, definitely used her fame and trying to use my name and the name of others in order to raise money for this, what she calls appellate fund, what I believe is just her commissary fund.
We're gonna take a short break, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is George with Maap Real Talk Show. Again, we are continuing our conversation with Mr. Kirk Nurmi. Again, sir, welcome back again. As you
Thank
know,
you.
every episode we have to say this in just in
Yes.
case.
Well,
we don't
we're
know where
back.
that's
We
going to
don't know
go,
where
right?
somebody started, yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you again, like I said earlier, for coming here and giving us this
Sure.
lengthy conversation. I hope the audience, the viewers, get to see this other side that they haven't seen before. You brought up in the third segment that about the cancer. You know,
Yeah.
the child. Was it really cancer, or is it like cured? Is it in like what stages?
Well, at the time of the diagnosis, which
Diagnosis.
was August, September of 2015,
15, right?
it was stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma,
Right.
which means that there were 3 tumors within me. So one was
On-
extracted from the armpit. They
right.
did the surgery, they did the test. That's how they found out it was cancer.
Right.
And then when I go through the scans, I found out I had another tumor by my stomach and one near my heart.
Jesus Christ!
So did they take those
So when you
out?
said you didn't know when you didn't know you're gonna live or die, I wanted the viewers. That's why I want to touch base on this because I already remember this, but I wanted to hear from you.
Sure.
Obviously, you're the real deal.
Yeah.
That's no second hand. You were really facing death at that point, were you, sir?
Yeah, no doubt about
I
it.
mean, the doctors would like they say pretty much like it's
Well,
over.
look,
Like,
the odds, it's pretty much math. It's
Right.
not like it's over, but it was a 70% chance that I would send the cancer into remission and a 30% chance that I wouldn't survive it.
right.
And that's good odds if you're making a bet,
you make-
right?
right.
If you're going to Vegas right now, I know it's closed down, but if we're going to Vegas and making a bet, right?
Right.
That's okay. But when it's a 30% chance, in my head, it was a 30% chance of dying.
Wow.
And so you tend to fixate on that part as opposed. And so if that happened, I wanted to be able to have the book out there.
That's what I
demonstrate
meant.
it.
So I
Because
want to
I
clear this
also
to the
know-
audience. You wanted like to speak before because you knew the death is near. So
Well, it
It
was
was
possible.
possible.
Possible. I wouldn't say that.
Well, that's
that
what.
was near.
But that's what usually when you get cancer, the first thing in your mind is, especially at this certain age, we know like that's what's coming next. So it's only common sense.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah,
Potentially.
but certainly, yeah, it was just a way for me to speak from beyond the grave if I
Right,
had
there was,
to.
yeah.
If I had to.
And that's very important. That's what
Yeah.
I was leading to.
Yeah.
Like, you know. So this is amazing. So what was the process like, sir?
The process
Of
of
the chemo, the whole schmarazzo.
it was tough, you know.
Were you bedridden, or like you were going about your business? Were you getting dizzy, tired, exhausted?
Well, probably all the above. I mean, look, chemo's not fun. My
Right.
medical advice to people is not to
Yeah,
get
but I want
cancer,
people,
right?
yeah, to
Yeah,
know.
chemo's not fun. It's a scary substance, right?
Right.
And you're thinking, you know, you're going to go through 6 rounds. It's
6
going to be debilitating to your
Right.
body. You know, your joints, different thing. It has
yeah.
effects, right? And if I could back up a little bit with
Yeah.
your question too, because I think this is important.
Yeah.
Because so many people watching this might either be facing a cancer
Right, that's why
diagnosis or know a loved
I
one
dedicate
that
this
has
segment
it.
just for
Yeah.
this because I want to talk about this.
Sure. And my point is though, is like, I remember when I had that diagnosis,
Right.
is that at that stage in my life, I was in my 40s, late 40s,
Right.
and I really wondered, I went to a dark place, I really wondered whether or not I should go through the chemotherapy.
Right.
I really had
So you had
which-
doubts.
Which is young.
debate in
Yeah,
my
that's
debate
young.
in my head, but it was like, you know, I wasn't happy in my legal career. All this infamy had been cast upon me. I was like, do I really want to go through the chemo chair?
Meanwhile,
to
you should be
rebuild-
proud what you
to
did. But
rebuild
continue.
my life. And so I made the decision to go and do the chemotherapy based on the idea that I wasn't going to live my remaining years the
Right.
way I had the previous years. So I made that promise to myself that I was totally going to rebuild my life. And I had faith that there was going to be something
Right.
more for me down the road. And that's really important for me to emphasize because I know that there's
It's
a lot of
incredible.
people that are facing those diagnoses. And I feel so fortunate that I'm still here because I know a lot of people aren't. I
Right.
know that cancer has taken a lot of people from this planet, right?
Right.
And harmed people, you know, in different ways. And so, you know, each and every person is going to have their own unique experience with
Right.
cancer, right? And so mine was really, you know, it wasn't just about the process of going into the chemo chair and the side effects, because that's going to be different for everybody. So, but what I want to emphasize to people is that spirit of hope that you go in there with,
Right.
and learning the lessons.
Yeah, because this is your camera right
Yeah.
there. I want people to understand.
Learning the lessons from
Right.
cancer and understanding the process. And, you know, that's why I wrote, when I got done, I wrote this book, Defend Your Greatness.
Right.
Because it's about living your most authentic life. You're born great. And we tend to lose sight of that in the shuffle and all these things that we're doing in our lives. And going back to my Don King moment of a mortality reality, when it becomes a reality, you start shifting your focus.
Right.
And I think that's what I'd like so many cancer patients or those facing the diagnosis to know, that there can be a different way to live, that you can learn lessons from cancer.
Right.
You can go into that treatment chair and come out different and come out better.
Wow, this is incredible.
How do you feel today? Is everything?
Well, look, chemotherapy does a number on the body,
Oh,
right?
right.
You know, and I had lost 80 pounds the right way. Everybody's asking me. So my first book was actually a weight loss book because
Weight loss.
I had done if you see me in trial, you saw me in trial, I had a shaved head and I was
Yeah, I did see.
290, 280, 290. And I got all the way down to like 212. I was slim, and everybody was like, "Oh my God!" They thought, "Well, that was it."
They automatically
They
think
thought
you
the
have
worst.
surgery.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was
They
like,
thought like that.
he
They
got
always think
hair
like-
plugs and gastric
Tummy tuck.
bypass on the county.
They thought it was a
on
tummy
the,
tuck.
on the county's dime, right? And which wasn't true. My wife finally stopped shaving my head, which we started in law school. And so yeah, I made that change. But chemo, you know, put 45 pounds on my body because of the steroids and the
Yeah,
water,
sure.
water weight and things
Right.
like that. And lots of people lose weight, but that didn't happen for me. And so I've still been battling up and down. My doctor says it's a good idea or a good thing that I've gained some weight because I don't weigh what I used to, but he says it's a good idea. And so I get the joint pain, I get the
Sure.
aches, you know, and I'm obviously not getting younger in the process too. But yeah, I mean, chemo certainly ravages the body, but you know, I get scans every year. I had one that was really scary a couple of years back regarding a nodule in my lungs, but fortunately, that was benign. And so yeah,
Good.
I'm doing
Good.
okay. You know,
That's good.
not as young as I used to be, and not as
Well,
limber as I used to be, but you know, overall the health is good.
That's great.
Well, I'm just a cancer advocate. That's been kind of my thing for many years. I've lost so many people to it. So,
Yeah.
you know, I know chemo does, and it depends on what cocktail you're
Yeah,
on as
right,
well.
right.
What it can do, like I've had friends that have lost their fillings because their teeth kind of rotten from the chemo, because
Yeah.
it just again,
like ticks.
yeah, because it eats
Takes
the
its toll,
enamel,
yeah.
and so it's just amazing. You were talking, I was kind of getting a little emotional.
Yeah.
So-
I'll be in
that's
I'll be
why
in the
I'm not-
dentist
I know,
Monday,
you thought
so-
you were looking at me.
If they had seen me, like I was going, like, where you going?
No, I
saw that
she
emotion.
saw me. He
Yeah.
thought I was going to say
Yeah.
something. I was
Yeah.
just trying to choke back.
No, I saw you choking up.
I saw
was
my
like-
best friend died of.
I was gonna ask if you want me to change the subject.
No, yeah, right. She died of cervical cancer. It'll be a year in October. So,
well,
and
so
she
did
fought
I,
it too.
yeah.
Like and so I'm glad you're healthy. And
Absolutely.
so.
So is there anything you want to say about the doctors that helped you? Because sometimes
Right.
we forget the people that saves us. You know. what
Yeah,
I
I mean, it's incredible. You know, we
mean? Nurse, doctor, the people that work
nurses,
with.
doctors, everybody. I don't know if they'd want me to say what
Oh
I
yeah,
went, but
they would love it. If I was a doctor,
Absolutely.
I would love it.
They're
I
heroes.
went to Ironwood Cancer and Research, and
Thank you,
uh,
Ironwood.
I had a great doctor and a great team, great nurses that got me through the chemotherapy and everything else. A very kind and compassionate group of people.
Wow, this is
No doubt
wonderful,
about it.
man. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We thank Arwood as well. You know,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
because that's where the whole thing starts. You know, like were you scared? Like I don't want to put you on the spot. Were you like nervous, scared, or were you just going with the flow?
Well, you know, there was a certain reality to my life. Like I said, debating whether I was going to go into the chemo chair or
Right.
not, right? And yeah, that percentage that you're not going to make it out kind of looms large,
that
right?
looms, right?
But I also knew that it was out of my hands.
Yeah,
Like
wow.
I couldn't cure myself of that cancer, so all I could do is show up every 3 weeks and get my chemo and do everything
Do
I
everything,
could.
yeah.
That's
And the
all I
other
could
tumors,
do.
did they take them out or did they shrink?
No,
or-
they use the chemo to shrink
Shrink
the
'em.
tumors. Yeah.
Well, with that, we're gonna end the segment for get that commercial going. Hopefully, see the sponsors. We're gonna take a short break. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back. This is Maap Real Talk Show. We are so excited. This is the fun segment, we call it, because we're going to touch base on the good stuff and the funny stuff and what's ahead for Mr. Kirk Nurmi. We want to thank him vividly for the other 3 episode segment that we just did with him, giving us the honor to be on the show. Again, I'm welcoming back my Ronk co-host, my co-host Cyndee Head, and of course, we with this gentleman, Kirk Nurmi, right? Is that how you say it?
Yeah,
I don't
you
know.
got
I've
it
been
right.
saying it the whole time. I hope I said it
I would
right.
have corrected you.
Too
You would
late
have
now.
corrected me?
Yeah.
Because, it's
Yeah.
N-U-R-M-I,
It's over
folks.
now.
You know, it's like, I had to learn
We're
it.
gonna have to reshoot the whole
But
thing.
I'm dying to talk to you because this segment, it's about living again. Can I call it
Yeah.
that?
Sure.
Like, I saw yourself, how, like you like me too. I feel like I'm close to you in that regard. You rejuvenate yourself as I watched you. You know, I did my homework for the past 8 days. And I see the roads and the paths you took, and now you're on a new path. You want to elaborate a little bit about what you're doing, especially with the comedy and the good things in life?
Sure,
And if you want,
sure.
if you give us the oblige.
Yeah, sure. You know, going back to what I said earlier,
Yeah.
I felt like there was a new path for me when I went
Right.
into the chemo chair. And, you know, when the bar was upset about writing
Right.
Trapped with Miss Arias,
Right.
they were going to suspend me. And I made the point, no, I wanted to do something else with my life. I remember
Right.
that promise to myself. So, and I'd been a cancer survivor by that point for a few months. And so I decided to, writing's important to me. That's one of the things I do. I wrote a book called Defend Your Greatness,
Right.
which deals with
Which is I'm going to read soon. But I'm
with my
sorry.
and that's probably the book I'm most proud of.
I ordered it.
Because there's some great life lessons I think in dealing when I battled infamy and cancer, right? And that was my first one-man show. I came out, I did a one-man show called Infamy, Cancer, Life, and I talked about some of those things. And it was like a 90-minute kind of spontaneous kind of show where I just
Like an
told
improv.
stories of my life. Not quite like an improv, but it's just me. So it's like
Yeah.
one story of my life, and it's not the traditional improv people
Right.
might see.
Give you ideas,
might
but it
see
was
the
your
comedy
idea
club.
for
It was
improv.
my idea. It was the story of my
It's
life.
your story of your
I
life.
talked about some of the things from my childhood, like we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
with the candy theft and things like that. And then I started writing more and more. I wrote parts 2 and 3 of Trapped with Miss Arias. I wrote a fiction book because I was a big fan of Mickey Spillane. Mickey Spillane was a crime writer in the 50s.
Right.
They were very hard-boiled. They were sexist, but there was something that really great about them, and they were shorter. So I thought, well, with today's attention span,
Yeah.
and
It'll
we're
be
going to have
perfect.
to edit that. It's going to be perfect when we edit it. But the
people don't-
attention span is shorter. So I started writing some of those things, and then my newest venture that this COVID has kind of put a hold is to do a 90-minute one-man show called Overcoming Jodi Arias.
Right.
And one of the things when I tell people that title, some people say, well, what's funny about Jodi Arias? I say, absolutely nothing. Those are horrific events, and I'm glad we're getting to this point, because I always like to say this when we have conversations like this. I never want to lose sight when I do a show or anything else of the tragedy that happened on June 4, 2008 that brought all this about. I mean, a beloved young man lost his life, and I never want to lose sight of that.
Alexander,
that's not very fun, Mr. Alexander. That's not very fun, but I decided to come up with this one-man show about overcoming Jodi Arias, because there's so many things. The human condition is as unique as it is the same.
Right.
And we all go through different battles and different things in our life. And I had to overcome a couple things, cancer and Jodi Arias. And I call the show Overcoming Jodi Arias because most people are going to associate me.
Always,
right?
with that, yeah.
Like I said this the other day, I could cure cancer.
Right.
And I could come up with a vaccine for COVID right now, lay it down on the table
They will
here.
still give you your name.
And it wouldn't
Put
be,
her name first.
It wouldn't be Kirk Nurmi cured cancer and COVID. It would be Jodi Arias' former lawyer cured cancer and COVID in one day, right? And so that would be the cell, and that would always be the cell, and that would always be with me. And the association that we talked about earlier, the negative association, based on the misunderstanding that I believed her, or that the story was mine, or what have you.
Right.
That is a burst that I have to overcome in my life. So it came together with the show to kind of give the background of the trial, some different things, give the background of who I am, and include some laughs along the way. Like you'll see me in a wig and a Yoda hat and different things.
Right.
Because, look, I know everybody...
We didn't get that today. What happened?
Yeah.
Well, you got to go to Stir Crazy.
You got to go to
August 9th.
Is it August 9th?
August 9th.
August 9th.
I know, but because you postponed, right?
August... Well, yeah, August 9th is the new date.
It's the
it
new
was
date.
April 12th.
It was April 12th, now it's August 9th.
But if you're seeing it after August 9th, 2020, then you're out of luck.
Yeah, well, no, we're gonna air this show. We're gonna air soon as quick as we could edit, because that's how I operate.
Yeah, but
if you could tell us where the place is
Stir
at.
Crazy, you go to kirknurmi.com, you'll see my event list.
Right.
I don't even know if there's tickets available based on the.
But at least they'll get the idea
reconfiguration.
to keep following.
Yeah, keep following me. Go to that website or on all my social media. But yeah, it's a show I came up with to, laughter brings hope, right? So there's nothing funny about what happened on June 4th.
Who's the cop you worked with? This gentleman. He's
Well,
a comedian.
I met Jim through a mutual contact, and Jim Perry's going to be the host. He's going to do a few minutes, and then I will launch into my 90-minute one-man show that has some serious elements and moments of laughter, because I think when we have laughter, that makes room for hope.
Right.
When we look at our problems and we can laugh at them a little bit,
Right.
that can make room for hope. And I think that hope makes room for a brighter future, and that's what I try to convey in my show when I talk about this infamous trial. And also, like I say, there's things for true crime fans as well to latch onto and learn a little bit more about the show.
Wow, this is incredible. So that's
About
where
the trial, I should say.
So you're gonna look at this as full time, or there's other things in your approach?
Well, there's other things in my world. I do motivational speaking. I've done
Right.
motivational speaking for corporations
Right.
and talk about defending their greatness and working within their heart. I've done some life coaching. One of the things that was important to me is to help the legal community in a different way, because so many lawyers are stressed out. You see suicide.
So since you
see
give
unhappiness.
motivational speaking, young you now, as you go into law school, what advice would you give yourself?
Nothing, because I think everything has to play out, and
Has to
everything
play
happens
out.
for a reason.
Like there's nothing to say, like
And
something
experience
withstand.
teaches more than words.
Then
teach.
more words, right?
Yeah, and those feelings and everything else, they're part. I went through a lot of introspection. I meditate every day. A lot of work on myself. Had some great help from some great people like Sean Stevenson, who recently departed, and great mentors like that. With not only with my speaking, but with my healing as well. The healing from the trauma of being trapped with Miss Arias for 5.5 years. So that's what I try to give back and try to bring that out to people with my books or my.
Well,
my
you
shows.
did. That was like awesome.
Thank you.
I think it was incredible. That I know a lot of people were against it, but that's another chapter. But I think what you did with your book, at least in my opinion, it gave us the light to see what the other side that usually we don't see. Like what happened inside the court as well. You didn't mention much, but I wish somebody would mention something because she's departed, like in some sense, to a life sentence. I think that people need to know like what happens. Sometimes we don't get to see what happens inside the courtroom.
Yeah, and
even though you have the cameras on, but we don't know what happened in the deliberating room, you know, like in the back.
Right,
You know
and
what I mean?
you see only a small percentage.
Small percent, yeah.
And that's why I even
It's
made
hard
the
for me to
reference
make up my mind. Even today, you just told me new things.
earlier is that you see 1% of a person. It becomes more like a character in a
Right.
reality show, and the trial becomes a reality show. So what I try to do in my books and my show is to try to get the truth out there. Try to get the
If
full
we
picture.
have a couple of minutes, right, sir? The question I was going to ask you: how did media play the role, like, and the cameras in court? How do you feel since you're not, no offense, you're not a celebrity, like like you're not a star, you're not used to cameras, you didn't rehearse on stage. You deliberated, you mock trials, you did litigation. Now you're in the courthouse, now the camera's on you.
Yes.
Where's the nerve wracking? Like I remember first time I was on camera, I was nervous, even though I'm the director sometimes, right?
Right.
So what happened? Like take me through this, like for 1 second before we end our segment.
Sure.
What happened when you have the camera on you? Do you use different words? Do you approach it differently? Do you more sir, yes attorney? Like where do you go with that? How that builds into it?
I don't think
Does the camera keep you guard?
consciously this isn't very fun, but there's a psychological principle called the
Yeah.
reactivity effect,
Right.
which means that when people are being observed, they
Like
know
now, we on
differently.
camera, we
Right.
observe, we watch what we say to the
Right.
audience, so we make sure like we give them good substance.
Right, and we don't say the 7 dirty words.
We don't
right?
say, yeah,
We
like
don't
what
say,
the heck? We don't get
This is a fun segment, so
exactly.
we
We could shoot it.
Yeah.
I want you, and you have no idea how excited. You could tell I'm thrilled that you're here. But I also want to have little information for the
Sure.
audience, because just because I'm thrilled, that don't mean the audience is going to be thrilled.
Yeah, they might be a
They would
snake,
say, get
right?
out of
Yeah.
here. So tell us a little bit about this other side we don't know. That's really where.
The other side of
Yeah, like, I don't know. Like the camera's on you. Like what happened now? You get the book, the penal law book, and you go, wait a minute, I gotta go line by line. Like
No,
what
I mean,
happens?
I really focused on doing my job.
Yeah.
Like there was, a lot of people asked me why was the trial so popular, everything else. I said I was in the eye of the storm.
Right.
I was a lawyer. I was, I never thought I'd lose my anonymity.
Right,
So I never really valued it.
right.
But I obviously over time, and when that trial was going, I was losing my anonymity by the minute, right?
Right.
Because it was
Worldwide.
worldwide, right? But the point was, my job was to fixate on the trial.
Right.
It was a bunker mentality. I was there. I was ordered by the court, and we were circling back even perfectly to what I was talking about. In the very beginning,
very important statements.
those rights
Yeah.
are what I was there to protect.
Right.
Right? I wasn't there to be
Defendant
You know,
her.
I didn't want to use the trial as an infomercial for my private practice.
Right.
I didn't want. I could have done things differently, and I could have done those things that might have brought more clients in. Right.
Right.
But I had to, and I detail in my book, I had to go over a very specific strategy. The only way I thought it would save her life, and so. That was my fixation. It wasn't the cameras. It wasn't anything else.
Right.
It wasn't all the hoopla that was going on around me.
Actually, it's a nerve wrecker if you want it. It's not even. It's like for me, I would think.
Well, yeah, it was nerve wracking, but
to
really
do your job.
once the courthouse door shut, I was, it wasn't like it was my first trial.
Right.
So once I was in my chair at the defense table, I was ready to go and be a lawyer. And the cameras around
You
me.
forgot all about them
I forgot
after-
all about them because
Right.
I had a job to do and I had a life to save, and myself and my defense team accomplished that goal.
Wow, that we're gonna end
And
it on this. This is beautiful.
and whether the terrorists like it or not, that's the way that's the way the trial process works. And you might
Folks,
think
it's
Miss
meaning the trolls.
you might think that
They're-
Miss Arias deserves death. I'm an opponent of the death penalty. I was there to do my job, and that's what I did.
And you did a great job.
And what you see on TV with any of these trials isn't really the whole person. It's
Well,
more,
that's what I mean.
It's more a role that's
Yeah.
cast upon them in a courtroom.
Yeah. And with that, we're going to have to end it right now. But I
All
just want to
right.
thank you one more time. If everybody wants to say thank you as well.
Thank you very much.
And I would like to
you
give you a
both.
round of
Thank
applause
you.
if it's okay. We do that sometimes.
Oh.
Thank you for coming, sir.
Thank
And
you.
as we all know, before you ended, we have in the back, we have Steve Wargo, Michael Heberling, David Manoff, Thank you so much, guys, for being with us as the crew, because for me, the crew and I, we're on the same level right now. I want to thank you for helping us and help the show. And thank you for sending this message out there. And thank you, my co-hosts. And last but not least, of course, we honor you, sir, by thanking you so much.
I'm
Kirk
honored to
Nurmi.
be here.
Thank
It
you
was such
for
great
being
to
in
be
our
here.
show
Thank you very much.
and plugging Maap Real Talk Show. With that, stay tuned for the next one. I'm not saying bye. Stay tuned.